All right. So, how you said you started watching my YouTube videos a long time ago.
Yeah, about 5 years ago, I think.
And do you remember how you found me?
So I was binge eating at that time, and I went to YouTube to look for solutions. Then I stumbled upon your videos by accident, I guess. Yeah.
And then you just started watching them from there. And they made sense to you?
And at first, they made me very uncomfortable. I just wanted to switch it off, but then it made sense. I couldn't switch it off.
Yeah, right. It's do you think it's because I was presenting like, I don't know, what you're gonna have to do to stop? It's like taking away what you need from the eating disorder.
Yeah, like I feel like your approach prevents people from, like, you just don't enable them.
Yeah.
And the way you described the eating disorder sounded like you know what you're doing. So,
like I've been there before.
Yeah.
Because I have. Okay, so but from your email, it sounds like you really haven't had any issues, any eating disorder stuff for a long time. When was the last time you binged?
Maybe half a year ago. It's quite recent because it took me a long time to come to terms with what I need to give up in order to be free.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and to just let go of the whole body image. So did you were able to watch the YouTube videos? Did you find that they helped guide you through it? I mean, it's a lot to listen to someone else and to listen to their recovery. And then to try to get little bits here and there specific to what you need. But what was it that you think really changed things for you?
I think it was when you tell people that you have to give up the dream of being thin permanently.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was the thing, the biggest obstacle for me that took me, I think, 2 to 3 years to get over.
Yeah. Yeah, and don't you agree? It really is a process of you getting to that point. It's like you had to suffer this much more, that much more. You had to kind of look at every single reason why you wanted to be thin from every single angle to then let go of every single aspect of it. So yeah, that can take a long time for people to do. Yeah, it's like when you're ready, the moment happens, you're ready to do it. You're willfully actually accepting that, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, it wasn't that hard. Did you find that after you actually faced it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. Okay, so we're actually talking because you want help with codependency.
Yeah, in relationships.
Yeah. So in the relationship you're having the hardest time with is your parents. Like you have issues, boundaries with them. How old are you? 22?
21.
You're 21. Are you still living at home?
I go back home occasionally, but I live on campus.
Got it. So you're going to school. Okay, so where are you? Where are your parents? Where were you born?
I was born in Indonesia, and then we migrated to Singapore.
Okay, so you're going to school in Singapore right now?
Yes.
And your parents are there too?
Yes.
Oh man, I don't know much about the culture, so that's where you're gonna have to help me understand your culture. I know the United States culture real well, right? So I don't know, what are the dynamics between, your parents? In your culture, do you guys tend to leave the home and never come back, or come back and forth, or what's it like over there?
So, from where I come from, my community specifically, usually kids don't leave their parents' house unless they're married. And once you're married, sometimes you either live with your mother's side or your in-laws, and some people move out altogether, but you still stay in contact, of course. Like you visit them.
Yeah, but it's more common for you to stay with your family. So is that the same for boys as it is for girls?
For boys, it depends. But for girls, there's more of an idea that you need to stay with the family or stay with your in-laws. It's like very rare that you just stay on your own.
Got it. So there's kind of this idea that you need help, you need support, which is fine. That's great and all. There's benefits to that, right?
Yeah.
So do your parents, what do they want from you?
So over the years, I've come to discover that they believe that I am responsible for their feelings and happiness, which feels like it's impossible because I cannot control their feelings and I cannot control their perception of situations.
No, because they are not questioning their beliefs, right?
No.
Because so that's the problem. So it's that they hold on to these beliefs that they believe. It's like I talk about dogma a lot. Do you know what dogma is?
Yeah.
It's that unquestionable truth that you're just not to question. It's sacred. It's true. And once someone believes that something like that, it becomes kind of part of it becomes part of our wiring. It's like a rock is a rock, sand is sand, water is water, and these beliefs are equally as true as the air is, right? And so they don't question it, they don't hold on to it, they don't defend it anymore. So when someone or something occurs that's counter to it, they experience cognitive dissonance. Like, hold on a second. And so instead of looking at the belief that is a source of dissonance, they think that the evidence that is counter to the belief is the actual source of the dissonance, right? And so I know for me, being raised in extreme religious environment, if I were to drink alcohol, which was against the religious beliefs, my parents would think that there was something wrong with me, not to ever question that there might be something wrong with expecting someone to never drink alcohol. In reality, does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, and so it's not. So that's something you can't change. Your parents hold these beliefs or whatever it is that they're comparing you to, right? So they have a belief, you have an action. That's where they're offended, or you're responsible for their feelings. They don't see that what's responsible for their feelings is in fact the belief that is promoting the end result. Do you get that?
I do.
Okay, awesome. So keep on going. So they think you're responsible for their feelings.
And I understand that this is an issue that has been there before I was born. I mean, it manifests in many aspects of my life, including religion, what college major I should study, and potentially what partner I should have in future. Mm-hmm. And I see it happening to my sister already. Like, my parents disapprove of whom she's seeing, and their response is so aggressive. Like he's not the correct religion. He doesn't have the correct qualifications or education level, and then they're responding with death threats and guilt trips. Like threatening to kill themselves and harassing her every single day.
I hate to laugh at that. I'm so sorry, but they're desperate, man.
Yeah, and they will say things like, well, before I was married, I made a promise to God that I would raise my children Christian and that they would marry Christians and that my grandchildren would be Christian. I can't possibly be responsible. Me and my sister, we cannot possibly be responsible for that because they made that vow to God before we were born, and
it's really not about you. Yeah, it's not your responsibility. But can you see then why your parents would feel? Is this your father or your mother?
Both. both of them.
Can you see why they would feel then like total and complete failures if you don't comply?
I see that.
Yeah.
I see that they tie their success directly onto their children's behavior.
Yeah. Well, and it's directly to their beliefs. Then their children are compared to those beliefs, right?
Yeah.
So that's why your behavior is so important, because if it doesn't match what they believe, to them it's unsafe. It would be, and they can't see that, right? They have no idea that ultimately they've fallen in love with their Christianity more so than they have their child.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Like,
See that.
They can't see that.
Yes.
What they think is they love their child so much that they want them to be a Christian. That's what they think.
Yeah.
They don't realize that they love Christianity so much that they cannot accept their child as the child is. Which is amazing, because isn't Christianity about grace and forgiveness and allowing you the free will to make and create a life that...
See the irony.
Well, they can't see that, right? So the best you can do, and this is where you have to potentially separate yourself from them if it is dangerous, one, because they clearly cannot, to them it is like dying. It would be like a death. Because they don't know, their whole entire identity has been hijacked, you could say, or brainwashed by that concept.
Yes, I see that.
Yeah. It's like being in a cult. Not to say that Christianity is a cult, but the way that they're processing it is very, very cult-ish. There's no grace. There's no lenience. I can relate. I can relate to what you're going through. I can. I married someone outside of the religion that I was raised in. I was raised in a religious religion, but it was a very dogmatic religion that you identified yourself by. So it would be like saying I'm Catholic or I'm Mormon or I am this. And here's how you're supposed to dress, and you have to marry in that religion. And anyway, so to deviate from that, as you've experienced, means that you are a bad person. It's, in their mind, they don't know how to, they're experiencing intense cognitive dissonance. Do you know what that is?
I get the essence of it.
Yeah. Cognitive dissonance is the discomfort and irritability and the negative experience that someone has when they have a belief that they have promoted, and then ultimately that belief is being countered, right? Or tested, or there's something that is showing that it's not necessarily true. For example, your parents love Christianity and they're projecting that onto you, which means for you to be loved, you have to be that religion, and you have to follow those rules and boundaries as they've been brainwashed to live by inside their tiny little box, as you want to call it. But yet you're a good person, you're a kind person, you're a loving person, you're gracious, you're actually living very Christian-like, but you're not staying in that box. Can you see how that would conflict with their beliefs, their concept of a valuable person, at least within their home life, right? Is that you have to be inside this space. So for you to leave that space would be, to them, abandonment.
Yes.
Right? So it's not them abandoning you as an authentic individual. It's you abandoning their cult brainwashed concept of their identity.
Yes.
So one of the ways that I imagined, actually saw my parents, especially my mother, who was very much so inside that space and very critical of her own children or anybody outside that space for sure, is I had to see her as retarded. I don't know if you know what that means. Special.
I think
Brain damaged. She's damaged. She cannot conceive outside of that. For her to experience that would require some form of death. Think of what it took for you to let go of that desire to be thin. Excruciating.
Yeah.
It was like dying.
Yeah, it does.
That's what they would have to go through.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think, too, you have to look at the pride that they have. How much pride. That's that narcissism, right? So if they hold what they believe as the holiest of all holy and the best of all the best, can you see then why they would want you to stay in that space?
I do.
That's actually really loving.
It's coming from a good place.
That's very loving. They love you that much that they're going to hold you hostage. Right?
Yeah. I just feel very conflicted about this because I understand it's coming from a well-intentioned place. Like, they really believe that it's unsafe to go beyond this tiny box, and they just want my sister and I to be safe within the box. But then it's beginning to really infringe upon our freedom and quality of life. So,
well, your mental well-being, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's not just about feelings. It's like, even if I don't take it personally and I somehow don't feel hurt by hearing the insults or the guilt trips, there's a tangible consequence to the stuff they're doing. For example, if I have a project overseas and they don't approve of it, they would hide my passport. And there's a tangible barrier that I have to deal with. And with my sister, if they don't approve of her partner, it's not just about, oh, I feel hurt, my parents don't validate me. It's the fact that they're making death threats. So there's a physical...
Yeah, they're abusive. It's psychologically abusive. Is this common in your culture?
I'm not too sure. I mean, this kind of dynamic is quite common, but this extreme, I'm not too sure, because people usually don't share the skeletons in their closet.
Got it. I see. So your parents aren't telling other people what's going on?
No.
Got it.
No, I don't think so.
Oh, they are miserable people.
They are.
Yeah, and desperate. It sounds like they're just crazy desperate.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's anything you can do besides leaving. I mean, I hate to tell you this. I don't want that type of abusiveness and manipulation. So what they're doing is they're claiming you as their property.
That's how I feel.
That's how it is. You are their property. The only way for you to escape is to become your own property and to cut ties so that you do not rely on them financially, emotionally, living. You would have to completely become independent and flee the nest. So once you do that, what can they do?
Well, there's nothing they can do to ruin my life. If we look at, practically speaking, I'm capable of being independent. It's within my reach. Mm-hmm. It's just my guilt programming is getting to me, because then my mind always goes back to, well, they raised me and they've really done a lot for me, and even if they think I'm a loser or whatever, that's fine, but I feel indebted to them in some way. Like, oh, they didn't mean to be this way. They have no idea. Wouldn't it be cruel of me to not be there for them in their old age? So I have that conflict where, on the one hand, I just want to get away from them permanently.
Well, can you see if you stay in the relationship as it is, that you're probably not gonna end up. It's not gonna be good. So I'm not suggesting you completely abandon and cut all ties. How old are they? You're 21. They got to be so young.
They're in their 50s, mid-50s.
God, they got a lot of life to live. So that, to be honest with you, it's not your responsibility to take care of them. See, what you're doing in that codependent role is you're wanting to be their rescuer. The other thing is, as a parent, they did what they should do with their child. They didn't do anything that they shouldn't do. It's not like you were, like imagine you have a child they can't feed themselves. They can't go to school. That's what babies and children, human beings are like, take a long time actually to become independent, right? To be able to feed themselves, to support themselves. So what they're doing isn't out of the norm as a parent. They're normal parents. Right?
Yeah.
You're not their slave. They don't necessarily own you. The guilt aspect is you thinking that you have a concept in your mind of what you're supposed to do as a child. Maybe that concept is flawed.
Okay.
If it's creating guilt, that's like saying I should be better than I am. That's narcissistic, right? Holding yourself to some holier than thou expectation that I should, I'm going to take care of my parents, when your parents are the biggest enemies you have in your life.
Yeah, that's a bit hard to digest.
Well, is it wrong? I could be wrong. I'm listening to you, but it's like they're to some degree your biggest enemy. They hate you most, right? They're your biggest haters when it comes to you being real.
Yeah, it feels that way.
Yeah, they hate you more than some stranger. They're kinder to a stranger than they would be their own child when it comes to their religious indoctrination. Right? That's how my parents were. They loved me. I don't want to say they were abusive, but when it came to me or anybody becoming a real person and leaving their religion, that was like deadly, right? You're dead to me. It's like it's so harmful. But yet my mom's best friend wasn't the religion I was raised in. So she was more gracious and loving to her friends, letting them be whoever they are, than to her own children who had to be super conformed.
Okay.
That makes sense? Like I was raised, again, let's just use the alcohol thing. I was raised to not drink alcohol. My mother was great friends with people that drank alcohol, and they were good people, and they got all that grace, and they get all this. But my daughter, if she drinks alcohol, is going to hell. I hate it. Right?
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
I do.
Okay.
Okay.
So, with that said, you could see that your parents within the cage are highly destructive. They're like your biggest enemy.
Yeah. I do, yeah.
You can't be real. They're more critical of you. You can't, they're more controlling. They're sabotaging your career. They're sabotaging, right? Who does that?
My parents?
No, your enemy.
Okay.
Someone that hates you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
And it's not that they hate you. They just hate you not conforming.
Yeah.
So that's where it's full of grace and forgiveness. You can forgive them, but does that sound like a healthy environment for anybody to function in?
No, it doesn't.
Yeah. So you might want to question this fantasy you have in your head that you've never looked at and thought might be flawed, of the idea that it is the child's job to make sure the parents are taken care of this early in your life. So I don't think that it's wrong that you feel feel loyal to your parents, and when it comes time for them to age and to be taken care of, that's not out of normal. But for you to feel indebted to their abuse and conforming to and staying in it, especially at a time when you should be leaving the nest, you should be creating your own life, right? This isn't the time for you to be stuck in taking care of their problems. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
I know, but you're questioning that. Why is that?
I think it's got to do with what I keep hearing when I grow up. Is sometimes they would, how do I say this? It sounds so weird. They give me these hypothetical situations when I was like 7 or something. And then after that, would you leave me if this happens? And would you stay with me forever? Like that kind of stuff. So, I mean, if I was a kid, I would just agree to whatever they wanted to hear because I didn't really understand the implications of it.
Oh, they have abandonment problems. Did your parents, where are your grandparents?
My maternal grandparents are dead because of illnesses. They died before I was born. And my paternal grandparents are back home in Indonesia. We don't visit them very often.
So I wonder if your parents have guilt over that.
I think they do, and they're projecting.
That's what it sounds like.
But
they're afraid you're going to do what they've done. But that's, again, relative to their own guilt or concept of what they should be as a child, right? And that they're afraid they want you to be for them what they weren't willing to be for his parents.
I suppose.
And more than likely, your mother, she's projecting onto you the loss of her parents, as if you're so lucky.
Yeah, she does that a lot.
That makes total sense. Oh my God. They have a lot of unresolved issues with their own parents.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, and you're responsible. So how are they going to resolve their issues with their own parents?
I don't think they will.
Well, they're not if you're the enabler in this, if you're the rescuer.
I have a feeling they're just going to die believing the same things because they're so defensive of their beliefs. And
well, you don't have to offend their beliefs. You just have to live the way you want to live with your life. This isn't, they don't own your life. They don't own your life. You're experiencing your life. They can't experience what you're experiencing. Whose is it to claim? I don't know. I'm asking you the question. You need to maybe create a boundary around whose life it is you're living. I could see if you were in their life, like if you were connected to them in their consciousness, how you would be responsible or part of fixing the damages that they've done in their own mind, right? But you're not. You're living your own space of consciousness in a totally different generation, right?
Yeah.
Oh my God. I'm so glad I'm not where you're at. It really takes just breaking free. There's a moment you're going to need to break free, and you're going to, and they might think that you're causing all their pain, but in reality, you have to recognize the pain that they experience, which is going to happen, is coming from their guilt and their beliefs and what they're not taking responsibility for. That's not your problem. That's their karma. That's what they need to figure out. If you take responsibility for that, for whatever messed up belief that you're holding on to, you get to have that karma. You get to have that. You're more likely to pass it down, right? Because you're not willing to be independent and let someone else have the karma, right? The end result of their own belief system. right? So my suggestion is you look for a job in a very different country.
I've thought about that.
That is what I would recommend. And you still write them, and you still love them, and you tell them all the fun things you're doing, and they may never write back.
What if it's time for me to make those major decisions like marriage and stuff? I can't possibly hide it from them. I mean,
well, no, you just make those decisions and you let them have their response, their reaction. You don't have to, you don't need their permission. You can just make those decisions. Do you not trust yourself?
I think I've trusted myself to be where I am today so far.
Yeah, so when the time comes that you feel that you've met someone that is loving and true and independent like yourself and all that, and you feel it's the right thing to do you need your parents' permission?
No.
Okay, so then you would make the decision, and if you're happy, you can trust that they should be happy for you. And if they're not, it's not your problem. It's their problem because they have beliefs that withhold them from experiencing love and happiness with you.
I see that logically.
I know. I know, but you're like, but the problem here is I think you are still attached to, you think it's your job to make them happy. So in order for you to do what I'm saying logically, right, for it to be that easy, you would have to be okay with their disapproval. You would actually have to be indifferent about their disapproval. It doesn't mean that their disapproval doesn't affect you. It just means that you're okay with it. That you, if it does happen, or expect it, if they disapprove of this, keep in mind, you're making decisions that you personally feel with your integrity are the right thing to do. So let's just make this, so let's not skip so far ahead as to marriage because you're not there yet, but just something as simple as what you want to do for a career. Something that you want to do that you feel good at.
Yeah.
Just start with that. Think of it like any relationship. I have a relationship with a job, something that supports me, that provides me food and shelter, and it supports me being independent. And it's something I want to do and I like to do. So that's a relationship, right? Relationship with a role that you're playing, with a job. If you feel good about it, you feel excited about it, you see that there's opportunity, an opportunity is opening for you, and you know you're going to make this decision. I'm doing it. You tell your parents and they're upset, they're pissed off, and they're ticked off, and they're going to cry, and they're going to say you're leaving us, and we hate you, and you hate us, and what are you going to do?
I would just go for it.
Okay. See that feeling?
Yeah.
You would have to say it's your beliefs are why you feel this way. It's not me. You would have to feel that way.
Okay.
Does that make sense? You'd have to see their limits. You'd have to see their limitations and recognize that they're not maybe capable of seeing the opportunity because their brain has been so condensed down into one specific way of thinking that they're not even aware of what opportunity looks like.
I think with career, I have a much easier time processing because when I chose my college major, my mother was really against it, and I had a huge fight with her, and she was...
What's your major?
I'm in materials engineering.
Okay.
There was this scholarship I really wanted, and I just accepted it, even though she didn't like it. And I think she hated me for a year. So with career, I can deal with that. But then her argument is that when it comes to marriage, it's somehow different because apparently marriage is a union between two families, and she feels like she's like involved and it's all about her. So I don't know. That's
I get that.
marriage thing.
I get that, but that's her belief. Do you believe that?
I think it shouldn't be about her. That's what I feel, because it's the person who's directly married to the other person who should be the people who decide. But
the family gets involved if the children are, because it is true what she's saying. I'm not gonna say that she's not right. For example, I married my husband and he has a relationship with his parents. I have to relate with his parents and his siblings.
yeah,
They're my children's grandparents. We do have to relate. Now, when we didn't live so close, like when I was in Minnesota, in Minneapolis, or it was basically relating on the phone, right? But if we live in the same place, now it's holidays together, and getting along is actually kind of a big deal.
yes,
When I talk to my son and my daughter, I'm always like, my kids, I'm like, just know that when you marry someone, we all want to get along. So hopefully they can get along with us. But that's the extent of, how much I tell them what to do. Ultimately, the goal is they can find someone that they love and that they're functional with, they're independent with, and they, and in the end, I'm going to have to get along with whoever they marry if I want a relationship. So the problem is what your parents think they need to get along with is they need to believe this, they need to think like that, they need to wear this, he needs to make that. There's way more, I call them tentacles of control going on in that space, right?
yeah,
That is how I was raised. They have to be this religion, and this religion requires that they dress a certain way, that they look a certain way, they talk a certain way, that they live a certain way. Every Sunday they have to go to church for this much time, and they have to do all this stuff and devote all their money to it. There was so much control inside the religion, right? So it was just kind of housed inside the religion, and you have to marry inside the religion. And then they, if you don't, that impacts your afterlife, right? Which means, if you don't get married in the religion, you've ruined it with God. So are they like that?
Well, for them, it's about God, but I think for my dad, it's also associated with prestige, because
that's his ego.
talks,
That's his narcissism.
yeah, because when he talks about religion, it sounds like he's not even talking about the religion anymore. It sounds like it's a social status.
Yeah.
I'm going to this church, and I drove a car there. And if you marry outside of this kind of community of people, then you're making me look bad by association. So there's a lot of that. I don't want to be associated with in-laws who are, in their eyes, inferior. And I can see how that is wrong and how I shouldn't be enabling that.
Well, if you stay inside the little box or community that they live in, you're going to deal with that. If you leave and get out of the realm of his ability to he won't have the power. He won't have the controls to do that. It's too outside of his life for him to try to fit in that box, right? That's why I'm like, you need to move. You need to get out of the small town. I know Singapore isn't probably small.
Yeah. Okay, let's say I do get out of here for my job or something, and then when they're starting to get ill and old,
you deal with that when the time comes.
Worry about that when the time comes.
Yeah, because they may be evolved. You're not. You're playing God right now. You're not giving them life's lessons that's could potentially occur over a 20 to 30 year. They should potentially evolve. They're going to be older. They're not going to have the energy to be so controlling, so demonizing, so degrading towards you. Plus, they don't think that you're capable, so you're not giving them benefit of the doubt to realize, oh, my daughter is so capable beyond our ability. I don't know how she's doing it because they can't imagine it, right? You're taking responsibility for their entire life right now at 21.
Yeah, actually I am.
Yeah. No wonder you feel like shit.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel it.
Yeah, maybe you should separate who you are. I think maybe, and this is again, I think you've hit the nail on the head here with codependency. You've created a concept of who you are relative to them. You don't have maybe a self-concept without them. Who are you if they don't exist?
Who am I if they don't exist? I just be a person.
I know, how does that feel? Just thinking about it. Does it feel good?
It feels really good.
I know. I'm happy for you to feel that you can feel, oh my God, if I was independent, I get to be that.
Yeah. I mean, I just...
Doesn't mean you're completely abandoning them. It means that you're getting independence from them. There's a difference.
So...
Because if they needed your help, you would come back and help them, but you're not going to dedicate your entire identity and your entire life to supporting them.
Okay.
There is a big difference, and they're nowhere close to that. They're nowhere close. So if you found out, first of all, imagine you leave, you have a career, you meet a significant other, you get married, they come to the wedding, they have to fly there because you're not going to get married there, right? Or not because they don't support it, whatever. You have children, they want to meet your children, you fly there, you bring the kids, you leave, you go back home, bye! Or they fly to come see you and see the grandkids, right? Back and forth. They need their own life. They need their own independence. I'm wondering how they would do without their children. How do you think they're going to survive without children?
I mean, for my mom, I know that she won't be able to because she's built her whole identity around me.
She'll be just fine. They're going to have a midlife crisis.
Yeah.
That's what they should do. That's what they should experience. It's not your job to have a child crisis so that they don't have a midlife crisis. They need to just have their crisis. They'll work it out. Let them evolve. You're taking responsibility for their evolution as if it's your life, not, as if you're living their life, not yours. You need to let them have that. They're going to have one. That's a consequence of their radicalized identity with religion. They're going to have a crisis. It's not sustainable.
Okay.
You need to get your wings, open them up, and fly away. And do it lovingly. You're not abandoning them. You're not. You know what? Give them gratitude for raising you to be a loving, kind, hardworking person that is adventurous.
Wouldn't they consider it not loving if in the moment they ask for help, but then I don't want to go back because I'm not ready to face some more.
No, I don't think that's not lacking love. It's called having boundaries.
Okay.
So it's obviously relative to what they need help with, right?
Like, sometimes they ask me for help, which
With
I
what?
used to help out
With what?
with their business. And in recent years, I just feel less and less willingness to help out, even though I can, because I just don't want to be in their presence and have to listen to more stuff from them. I just make up excuses like I'm busy and I gotta stay in campus today.
Yeah, I have a feeling that what you're experiencing is normal.
Doesn't make me a bad person, right?
No, I think this is natural. We are, as children, we naturally want to leave the nest. Independent. I want my own life. I want freedom. You are such a normal human being. This is a universal human being experience that you are experiencing. There's nothing wrong with you. It is absolutely what you're supposed to do. You are supposed to leave your parents.
Right. Another thing is I also lie to them a lot. Lying by omission, because now that I live most of the year away from home, and I made it a point to live away from home because it's like I hide major things that happen in my life just because I don't want to give them an opportunity to comment on it. I don't want to deal with that.
It's none of their business. You don't have to tell your parents, especially when you know that they're cognitively not mature enough. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
It doesn't mean you're lying to them. It just means that there's no reason for you to tell them what they can't handle. Mm-hmm. One of the ways I remember realizing, when I recovered and I recognized that my mom in particular, and my dad, were clueless. They were freaking clueless. They loved the religion more than they loved me. I know that's not true, but that's how they were that's what they were consciously aware of or living in. They weren't aware of that. That if I told them I was going to go out on vacation with a boyfriend that I wasn't married to, it would have been devastating. Because they can't conceive of a relationship outside of marriage. Like if they knew I was having sex without being married, it would have been traumatizing. I do not believe, and I had to kind of let that concept go. Well, I ended up getting married, eloping with that person because I had so much shame and guilt because I still believed in it. But as an example, if I were to do that today, I would never tell my parents because they're just so clueless. It would hurt them. I don't need to tell them. I don't need to tell them because they're not mature enough for it. I've evolved. That was the other thing I remember thinking. At some point, I have evolved beyond my parents' capacity. You have to break out of religion. You have to evolve out of it. You have to become kind of an independent soul, if you want to call it that. You have to have your own sense of capacity and navigation with your integrity, right? You have to believe, one, your integrity is valiant. My integrity is good. I don't mean harm. It's loving. I want to preserve nature. I'm a good person. All of that easy stuff, right? That's good enough for me, and I'm willing to leave the confines of being controlled and told how to be because I feel that my integrity is stronger and is more capable of navigating the real world, right?
Okay.
Do you think your parents are feeling that way about themselves?
No.
No, that's why they're gripping so tight to a religion, right?
Yeah.
And that's why they want you to grip so tight too. They don't feel a sense of capacity. They don't feel that they can handle it. So therefore, you can't handle it. And so if you leave that and you live in reality, you've got to be able to understand, oh, there's no reason for them to know my life because it's so outside of their understanding. And on top of that, totally different generation. Your parents were raised in a very different generation. So how would they do at your age right now with their thought process?
I have no idea.
In reality, well, you just think about that. How would they, in their thought process from 50 years ago, function today at 18, 19, 20 years old?
How they function
today.
The same way they are doing now.
They're not functioning well. No, it'd be worse. Yeah, they would not survive it. So you can't afford to stay in their space. Otherwise, you're going to have an eating disorder. You're going to have an addiction. You're going to have all sorts of problems.
Okay.
Right? So I don't know if that helps you at all. There's no reason to feel bad about not telling your parents everything that is clearly outside of their scope of reality. They're not in reality, are they?
Yeah, I feel like they won't handle it well. They'll just lose their shit.
Yep, that's a good terminology right there. They'd lose their shit. It's true. So are you doing something wrong by recognizing that? And kind of, they don't need to know. Do you feel bad?
Sometimes I don't know if my hiding and omission is enabling this to carry on. And
oh, I see what you're saying, because they don't know the real you.
I don't think it's... I mean, I've given up on the idea of I want my parents to know the real me. I think it doesn't matter anymore. It's...
Okay, you've evolved. That's evolved, what you just said. I don't need them to know. I can see that they're not gonna.
Yeah, I mean, I'm cool with that. It's just... I'm wondering if I'm being a dishonest person or just being inauthentic, you know? The whole...
I don't think so, because I think you do have to take into account the truth of the parents. You have to take into account what you're working with.
Yeah. Like, when I'm out with my friends or my co-workers, they know the real me. I don't hide it, because I'm not ashamed of it. Mm-hmm. But when I'm with my parents, it's totally different. Well,
you have to go down to their level. Just see it as I'm going to their space. I'm fitting into their space because that's what they're comfortable with. For example, when I would go home to see my mom, I would try to clean my language up. I would go to church with her just because I knew she would want me to go. Did I really get anything out of it? No, other than I was spending time with my mom. Did I have to tell her that I'm not going to church anymore? No, I don't. Did I need to tell her that I'm drinking wine with my friends on a Thursday night? What's that going to do? You see what I mean? Like you just go inside their space and you speak their language. It'd be like going into a different culture. I think that might be something to think about, that your parents are very much culturally appropriate for what they were taught 50 years ago. Would you agree that culture has evolved rapidly in a short period of time?
Yeah.
Okay, so they're out of touch.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that.
Mm-hmm.
Just go into their space and speak their language. It's like being an anthropologist. Just be with your parents as they are. Accommodate to them in their space. You don't have to, and you just have to be okay with that. You have to get to a place where you don't feel sorry for yourself because you can't have an authentic relationship with your parents and for me. Don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like saying, my parents are, mentally retarded and feeling sorry for yourself. What's wrong with mentally retardation? Nothing. They're retarded in this area. That's okay. You just accept it for what it is. I don't know if this is making any sense, but there are certain things I think you need to process through what you're afraid of. You need to go there and process that. Like, I'm afraid my mom isn't going to like when I get married to someone who I get married to. Well, what are you going to do when she doesn't like someone who you marry? You have to be okay with that. So you face it up front so that you feel free to marry the person that you love and want to be with. You know? It sounds to me, too, that you have the integrity there to want to take care of your parents. Like, when the time comes, you feel loyal to them. I feel that way. I was there for my mom when she died. The last 2 months of her life, I stayed at her house, and I wasn't at home with my kids. Right? And my family supported me. My husband and my kids totally supported me leaving and going home for 2 months to aid in my mother's dying process. Not all of my siblings were able to do that or could do it or wanted to do it. Right? And so it sounds like you have that in you. And you can trust that when the time comes, you're going to do what's right and what's appropriate.
Okay.
But you're not going to sacrifice your family, because you're eventually going to have your own family. If that is what is meant to be, you're going to have that. Who's the priority at that point, you know? Your own family. But there comes a point where, okay, my mother is passing away, my father, I'm going to go and I'm going to aid as much as I can. I want to be there, but I'm going to do it in a way that does not sacrifice my mental, psychological, and financial and family, well-being. This is the part where you have to have a sense of your boundaries, right? Your personal boundaries, from as far as like how you identify who you are, and really start questioning, should I feel bad for setting a boundary with my parents? I am an adult. I have a job. I want a career. I have my own life I need to live. It's not their life. I don't have to live their life the way they want to themselves. They have the free will to choose Christianity. I want the free will to choose what I want. Even if they don't think that I should. I don't know if this is even helping.
I get all these on an intellectual level, but...
Okay, what is it emotionally that you're afraid of then?
What am I afraid of? For some reason, I'm afraid that they're going to die thinking that their life wasn't worth living because it didn't turn out the way they wanted it to.
Okay, so whose responsibility is that?
Well, it's not mine.
Okay, but clearly you're afraid that they're going to think that, so guess who you think's who's responsible for it?
Me.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah. How do I stop believing this way?
Well, I think you need to let them... I think you do need to go through a dying process. I think you need to let them die. Not literally.
Okay.
They're going to die miserable people.
I have a feeling they will.
Okay, so why are they going to die miserable people?
Because they just never questioned their beliefs.
No, they chose their beliefs. It was a choice. Never questioned it.
See it that way.
Well, of course they don't. That's the definition of dogma. They think that it's a truth that's unquestionable, so they're not going to question it. They might question it when they die, because they'll look back and go, "What have I done?"
What do you mean by let them die?
Let them die. Let them have that. That in a way, it's like you're gripping onto their survival attached to them. it's almost like at some point you might have created a sense of pride in your mind. It could have been when you were a child and they were conditioning you or grooming you, if you want to call it grooming. That I'm going to take care of my parents and I'm going to make them so proud. Does that sound like something you might have thought in your mind before?
Yeah, I felt that way as a kid because my parents would advocate for that. I began to question it over time.
Yeah, but you're still holding yourself to it.
Yeah, I think I'm like partially holding on to that, partially not agreeing with it, and that's why I feel conflicted.
So, how old were you when you started thinking that way?
I think I was a toddler. I was in kindergarten.
So your survival and sense of purpose became kind of like your umbilical cord to your parents was still existing, figuratively. Symbolically, you still have the umbilical cord attached.
Yeah. I think I felt extremely insecure as a toddler because when my mom gives me these ultimatums, like in future, if hypothetically this happens, and like I feel pressure to agree with her because I was scared that if I didn't,
Yeah, it's like abandoning her.
I was scared I would be kicked out of the house actually, which I didn't think of it that way, but it's just a feeling. And when I look back on it, I think I was just insecure because I couldn't provide for myself as a child, and now it has become sort of a feeling of obligation, like if I don't do this, I'm a bad person kind of thing. Like I've been kicked out
that makes
of the
sense.
house
Well, it does make sense to me because they groomed you and as from a young age to feel obligated to be their rescuer, if that makes sense. Like you are a bad person if you don't rescue us.
Yeah.
Again, I think that's their own guilt they're projecting from your father's abandonment of his own family.
Okay. Are there any exercises I can do to?
You need to really contemplate this. I think what you need to do is you need to face what your fear is, which is abandonment from them. And disapproval. You're afraid of their disapproval to some degree. But honestly, I think this has more to do with your own desire and your own promotion and your self-concept of being a rescuer for your parents. Like you've really put yourself up on a pedestal in that role. So what if you were relieved of that role? How would that feel?
Like if the role doesn't exist at all?
You were relieved of it. They think you suck and they don't want you to rescue them anymore.
I would feel very free and I can have fun. I can have fun now. That kind of feeling. Anything is possible now.
Okay,
Anything
so
is possible.
is that the feeling that you're hoping for, that you want in your life? Okay, so you need to abandon the role. And in order to do that, you have to be okay that they don't want you. They do not want you in that role. You suck at it. They're going to kick you out. Okay. Wouldn't that be awesome?
Yeah. Yeah, I wish it would happen.
Well, you don't have to wait for them to abandon you. You just have to live the way you want to. Because that's the risk, right? The risk is if you live in truth, they're going to abandon you. You will not be held responsible to be on that pedestal anymore. they cannot rely on you anymore.
Okay.
So you have to question, is that really a bad thing?
No.
That was an intellectual answer. I want you to answer it emotionally. If they are disappointed in you, they think that you're failing, and because you're just being free, you're just being yourself, you're having a good time, you're having fun, you're being that way, you're being free. The way you would if you were relieved of the role, right?
Okay.
Are you following me right now?
Yeah.
If you were relieved from the role as your parent's guardian,
okay.
You are no longer your parent's parent.
Okay.
Because they don't think you're doing a good job. How would that feel?
That would feel really good.
And you would be happy, and you could have fun, and you could be yourself.
Yeah.
Okay. So what's the risk if you just start being that way?
Okay. If I start being that way, I think they wouldn't stop wanting me to be that role.
They would just try to keep on making you be that role? Are you sure? Because your fear is that, right? What's the fear?
My fear is that they will continue wanting me to be that role while I'm not being that role.
Yeah?
I mean, I sometimes wish they would kick me out of the house, actually, because then it would free me. But the thing is, I know they will not kick me out of the house because they're just so needy that. And if I were to take matters into my own hand and try to get myself kicked out of the house, or if I kick myself out of the house, I don't think they'll stop wanting me to be their rescuer. They'll keep harping on it.
Yeah, but eventually, if you don't rescue them, they'll find a different route because it's not going to work.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen them try the same thing that don't work over and over, hoping for a different result. Like, I've seen them do that in other aspects of life. And it's making me doubt if they will ever give it up and, free themselves from this, actually. So, I think my fear is not being dismissed of my job as a rescuer. My fear is that I dismiss myself from the job, but they still want me to take it.
Yeah, but if you're not in the same country, how can they do that?
Like, they can't physically harass me. That's one thing.
Mm-mm.
But they'll still continue doing that in their head, I think.
Well, in their head.
Yeah.
Okay, and whose problem is that?
Their problem.
Yeah. You're not responsible for their mental illness. Right? So if they keep on harassing you in their mind, isn't that mental illness?
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
Mm-hmm. If that's the state of their mind, how can you ever really help them?
I can't.
You can't. And to think that you can is like thinking you're God. Right? Thinking that you can... Just think about what that would take to actually... That would be like playing God. I mean, you can't change their state of mind and the illness that they live in. Right? Is that something you...
This is a job that I am bound to fail at because it's designed for me to fail in it.
Correct, because they're failing at it themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's not really, it's the way that they exist that's failing. It's the beliefs that's a big failure. How are they going to escape failing if the beliefs that they live in are inherently full of failure?
No. You have to get out of the beliefs.
Correct. And they're not gonna. You can't make them. It's their free will. They're gonna figure it out on their own. But if you take responsibility for making up the difference for their failed way of being and their failed religious ideology, I mean, think about what it would take to create homeostasis for a failed foundation.
We just have to rebuild that foundation.
Yeah, and it's you can't.
Yeah.
They're not going to change that.
Okay.
Because they don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
I don't know if you're seeing this a little different. You have to give them that. You have to be okay with them failing. You have to be okay with that. You got to let them have that. And that's what I think you're struggling with. You feel that that means that you're a failure because you've identified by their success or not success. You somehow are defining your worth from your ability to they're happy based on their happiness, right? So even if you remove yourself from the role, they're still unhappy, and for some reason you're tied to that.
Yeah, I see that now. That's true.
But how are you going to make them happy when the beliefs that they hold themselves to are inhumane? Meaning it's like a caged animal. They think the cage is safety, but they are now showing signs of being caged.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yeah.
And they think that you should go in there with them and then they'd be happier. Not realizing that that's their cage is the cause of their mental health problems.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel that way.
So when I say you kind of have to let your parents die, it's like you have to be okay with suffering. You have to be okay watching them suffer.
Okay.
If they suffer, is that your fault?
No.
Okay, that's your logic. What's your emotions say? If they are suffering, whose fault is it?
It's not my fault.
Mm-mm. Of all the people that are to blame, that they could blame for their suffering, then why aren't they blaming their own parents? Why is it their children's fault?
Well, my dad blames his parents a lot.
You get my point, though. It's like, why can't they look at their own way of coping is the problem?
Yeah. I feel like it would tear their reality apart, and I don't think they can handle that. That's why they never look at it. Because I feel like they're scared to look at it.
Well, yeah, because then they might be wrong. And that sense of being wrong would feel like they'd have to recontextualize their whole freaking life.
Yeah.
I've done that.
Yeah.
I did it.
Yeah.
That's like dying. They'd have to die. You know, spiritual death. That's what that is. The death of the ego as well. Death of the concept. It leaves you without a sense of It's like you feel like vulnerable. They would have to be vulnerable. They'd have to like actually connect with reality. They'd have to connect with reality. How are they going to do that?
I don't know how they're going to do that.
I don't know either. Why are you taking responsibility for that? This is not your karma to serve.
Mm-hmm.
So I think what you're going to need to do is actually let them suffer because of their own choices. It's like, this is amazing because it's reversed. Most parents feel this way about a child. So imagine a child has an addiction, right? Substance abuse. And they're starting to do things that are irreparably damaging their future, okay? Like stealing and all sorts of shit, right? And they're going to go to jail. But you know what? Instead of going to jail, because you feel bad that they're in jail, the parent goes and bails their child out. Works 3 jobs to make sure that this kid who isn't going to school anymore, right? There's an enabling thing here because you're so afraid your child can't handle it. They can't handle a job. They can't handle, because it makes them feel bad and they might start abusing again, right? So the parent becomes very much enabling because they don't think their children can handle it. And the child throws a huge fit, angry, breaks things when the parent doesn't bail them out, doesn't take responsibility, says, you don't love me. Who are you in this role?
Parent.
Yep.
Yeah.
You ever see it that way?
I do. I do see it that way. For a long time, actually.
Okay, so you have to let your parents fail and not take responsibility because it's not your fault that they live inside a belief system that isn't working. And if they fail, they might actually question the belief system. So give them that opportunity at least. If you don't let them have that opportunity, you're at fault.
Yeah.
Make sense? You're enabling. You're continuing to perpetuate it. You're not letting them have the consequences of their own belief system. Because they've convinced you somehow it's your fault if there's a problem.
Yeah.
So, how do I get out, Robin? Well, you're going to have to let them fail. You're going to have to go. So, leave. Live your life. Love them from a distance. Be loyal from a distance. Have boundaries. Man, it sucks. So sucks that your business is going out of business. That sucks. What happens if they go out of business?
I'd have to send them money?
No.
Oh, okay.
Are they children that don't know how to work? I mean, are they that limited?
No, they're not.
Okay, well, you're treating them that way.
Okay.
Think about it. I can't...
Okay.
These are grown-ass adults. How do they... Can't they just find another job? Is there not... You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Okay. I see that now.
Your first response was to send them money.
Yeah.
Because they're your little babies who can't work?
It's quite funny.
I know, I'm glad you're laughing. You're 21. You got to leave. If you don't leave, you need to leave. The umbilical cord needs to be cut. And if they tell you that you're a bad person because of that, you know what? You need to actually know in your heart the truth and let them think that way. Remove yourself from being the cornerstone of their entire system. If their business fails, whose responsibility is it for them to figure it out? It's theirs.
Yeah.
What are you going to do when they blame you?
Hang up the phone.
Because they're retarded. They are mentally problem. They believe so much in their religion, they should go on religious welfare. That stuff does exist, and it's there for a reason. They should use it. Do you know? I don't know if it does there. I mean, where their church has food storage and has job opportunity, there's so much.
Yeah.
If they're homeless, is it your fault that they become homeless? No, think about what it takes for someone to be homeless.
I guess you don't manage your money properly.
There's that.
Or you take on too many loans.
There's a lot of things that are involved in it. Mental illness, of which it sounds like they have. You know what I'm saying? Like there's so much going on here. Really, it's for a lot of people, it's just lack of taking responsibility, lack of taking ownership, unwilling to do small jobs, like even just working for $6 an hour at a dog shelter. You know what I'm saying? That there's a lot that goes that's in play here. You got to give them the opportunity to fail and fix themselves.
Yeah.
I don't know. Is this helping you?
It does. I think I might have to listen to this a few times.
Well, you have to see that your role is not to be their parent. It's not your job to be the parent that they're pissed off they didn't have. Yeah. I think it's awesome you're figuring this out at such a young age. You are fortunate.
Yeah.
No, you are. This is fortunate that you're figuring this out now, and you're not 50 years old figuring this out. So face these fears now. Face the loss of their respect. Face the fact that they think it's your fault that they went out of business, if that's what happens. Because you moved on with your life, which is what you're supposed to do. That's normal. Should you have to be an indentured servant to be loved by your own family?
No, I would rather not be loved if that's the condition.
Okay, so that's where you need to go. You need to just live truthfully. And the worst case scenario is that they hate you, they don't love you, and they never want to talk to you again. Don't you agree that's the worst case scenario?
No.
But what's the worst case scenario? That they hate you, but they want you to keep on and they pester you?
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's where you adjust and you create more boundaries. You can just know, I will always have a boundary. I will always keep a distance because they don't have a sense of those boundaries. They feel entitled. They feel, that they own me, and they don't. Yeah. They don't know it, but they don't. I have my own life to live, and they don't. It's not my job to make up for where they're incapable.
Yeah. Actually, that's true. I needed to suffer to recover from my eating disorder.
Yes, you did. For 3 or 4 more years before you listened to the same shit I said 5 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, if I didn't start binging, I think I would never question this supremacy.
Ever.
Like,
you needed to be miserable. You needed to have the consequences. You needed to lose your job, if that makes sense when it comes down to body image. You needed to suffer horribly before you were like, shit, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, your parents, they need to go through their own process. And if you continue to enable it, you're going to get sucked into that drama triangle, and don't complain.
Okay.
So I can't tell you exactly what you need to do. You just need to start to honor them by separating yourself from the codependency.
What does it mean to honor them?
To respect that they are individuals. And respect them as individual people that have individual lives, individual choices that have nothing to do with you.
Okay.
You know, start to, again, cut the umbilical cord. You need to have a very, you need to have a very clear understanding of who you are that is very separate from who they are. I mean, we're all humans, but they're separate humans from you. You're not one human.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean by honor them. Honor them as individuals. You can love your parents and you can respect them and see them as good people. I know you know they're good people. They don't mean harm. But I don't think that they are aware of what's harming you. They're not aware of that. If they were aware, if they could have a light shine on how this has impacted you, how would they feel about that?
If they had the awareness, I think they would change.
They would feel terrible. They would feel terrible about what has happened, and they would change. So you just have to forgive them because they're clueless. And you know they're clueless. They have no idea how this has impacted you. So you have, in order to honor them in the fact that they don't know, you need to start living a life that does not cause harm for you.
Okay. Would it be considered like conditional love from my side if, like, let's say I'm on the phone with my mom and she starts criticizing me and I hang up? Is that considered like, oh, you're being conditional?
No, that's having boundaries. You can say, Mom, I'm going to do what's right for me. You know? That's all you got to say is, Mom, you're criticizing me. I'm happy. I'm okay. I don't expect you to understand. I love you anyways. If you found out, if you got a letter in the mail from someone that said your mother has mental retardation, she's emotionally 12 years old, and she'll never go beyond that. She'll always be emotionally stunted permanently. How would that change your response to when she's on the phone? Yip, 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 yip.
I wouldn't take it seriously.
Okay, so that's what you need to do.
Yeah.
She's clueless. Clueless.
Yeah.
She has no idea how this has impacted you. She's just freaking clueless. She's not even capable of having that type of empathy. Right? So when she talks to you, you need to see her as like a 7th grader. You just be like, I love her. She's very special, right? That's how you feel. That's how I feel. It's not You're no longer a victim either, because you can see they just don't know. They just have no awareness. They're just in their tiny little space, and that's all they know is this tiny little space. And so you don't expect them anything other from them. So you love them for who they are. You honor them where they're at. By expecting them to be any different, that is dishonor.
Oh, okay. Okay, I get it now.
Yeah, you love them as if you're their parent and they're 2 years old.
Okay.
But they're not. They're 50 years old. So they live as adults. You let them be and you see them for who they are and you love them just the way they are. And you can see the context of how they came to be this way. And you can forgive it all because the way they are is there's history that has promoted this and they're not bad people. Okay, does that help? Is this helping?
I think it is.
Okay, good. You just, all I'm doing with you is thinking. Think. You got to kind of get out and see it from like when you're 50 years old and they're in their 90s and they're preparing to die. Where do you want to be? What do you want to do between now and then? Do you want to still be doing this for another, 30 years? Or do you want to get out, get a job, have a husband, have kids, live your life, create a life with this life that you have, having gratitude for having a work ethic and for at some point evolving beyond your parents. You've evolved beyond them, right?
Yeah.
Don't you want to love them even though they're in that cage?
I do.
Yeah, so you love them in the cage. You don't expect them to change. You honor them in that space. That's where their space is. They're doing the best they can. They're doing what's right for them. They're doing what feels safe to them. That's what they should do. You shouldn't have to do it with them. And if they have consequences because of that cage, let them have it. Just like you had to suffer with your binge eating disorder.
Yeah.
It was a good thing. Don't you agree?
It had to happen.
Yeah. Oh, I know. It had to get bad before you actually questioned. Yeah. Let them have that. Yeah. And what do you get by removing yourself as the parent?
I get to be myself.
Yeah. And and you don't have to feel bad about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you have any questions for me?
I think I've asked all the questions I have for now. Yeah.
I'm excited for you. You need to cut the cord and flee. You need to start looking for jobs somewhere else. Different country.
Yeah.
Take your sister with you. Okay, I'm going to stop recording and I'm going to upload this. Do you mind if I